Welcome back to Fixing My Faith. I'm your host, Vern Houle, and today we're going to be finding a correlation between the Bible and some indigenous stories. So the stories that we're going to look at, the one from the Bible is from Galatians chapter 5, so if you wanted to follow along, we're going to look at verse 17. And that's where Paul was talking to the Galatians about these two forces within and how there's always a struggle or a fight within. And then we're going to compare that to the indigenous story of the two wolves within, where there's a white wolf and a dark wolf, and how there's always a struggle with internal struggle between these two wolves. So we'll do a correlation, and we'll talk about this here for the next few minutes. So Galatians chapter 5 and verse 17 says, and this is what Paul was saying here, that for the flesh is against the spirit in its desire, and the spirit is against the flesh. For these are opposed to each other, so that the very things that you would like to do, you do not do. So he said we have the spirit, and then we have the flesh on one side, and there's this struggle, this opposing struggle between our flesh. So our flesh being our human body, we have all these fleshly desires, and the spirit being, of course, probably God's spirit. Well, he goes on to kind of talk about what the two are. He says, now the works of the flesh are manifest. They are fornication, uncleanness, loose conduct, idolatry, practices of spiritism, enmities, strife, jealousy, fits of anger, contentions, divisions, sex, envies, drunken bouts, revelries, and things like these. So, and then he says, on the other hand, the fruits of the Spirit are love, joy, peace, long-suffering, kindness, goodness, faith, mildness, self-control. And he says there's no law against these things. So we have these two forces. The one is loving, and the other one is the opposite. So Paul says in here, he says he's forewarning you that these ones that practice the other qualities, the bad qualities, the works of the flesh, he says they will not inherit God's kingdom. So he even put a warning in there. He says, I'm forewarning you the same way as I forewarned those others that practice such things. Yes. So then he ends the chapter. He says, if we're living by Spirit, let us go walking orderly also by Spirit. Let us not become egotistical. So he's even going on to talk about some other negative things that could happen. He says, let us not become egotistical, stirring up competition with one another, envying one another. So it sounds like he was dealing with quite the crowd in Galatia. And but we know the Bible is written for everyone. It's written for all time. And we see this struggle in the Bible, these two forces within. Now, if we look at the Bible, we're taught to hate one side and love the other side. Hate the works of the flesh, love the fruitages of the Spirit. We hear that oftentimes in talks and discussions. So we hate all these bad things, we love all these good things. Now let's look at the story, the indigenous story of Lore, and we'll see what's going on and how there's a parallel. You'll see a direct parallel in this story. But then you're going to see a little slight difference at the end, the story. So here we have it. I'll give you the setting. There's kind of a crowd in the middle of the community, the little village. And there's a fight going on. Two people are fighting in the middle of this crowd. So an old man was standing off to the back of the crowd, and he was instructing the young kids about life. And he ushered the children away from the fight, and he said to them, he says, a fight is going on inside me also. And he was looking more towards the young boys. He was using this as maybe an opportunity to give a lesson because of this adult fight going on. And the indigenous chief says, it's a terrible fight, and he says it's between the two wolves within. He says one is angry at times and has traits of envy and sorrow, regret, greed, self-pity, arrogance, guilt, resentment, inferiority and even tells lies and has false pride and is very egotistical. He says that's our dark wolf. And then he continues pounding his chest, and he says the other is joyful. It has strengths such as peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, benevolence, empathy, generosity, truth, compassion, and faith. So it's very similar to what Paul was saying in the Bible, the fruit of the Spirit. And so he says the same fight is going on inside you and every other person too, says the old man. So someone asks him, well, which wolf will win? And so the old guy says, he winks and he says, well, he says, it's the one you feed. So it's how we feed ourselves. So that's a whole nother discussion. I wrote a poem about how we have two wolves in a fight, and that'll be in another session. But anyways, he goes on to talk. He says it's how you feed these ones. He says, you see, if I only choose to feed the white wolf, he says, then the dark one will be hiding around every corner, waiting for me to become distracted or weak, and then jump out to get the attention that he craves. So he's kind of talking like we have these two people inside of us. And it is sometimes like we have two people inside of us. So he says this dark wolf will always be angry, always fighting the white wolf. But if I acknowledge him, if he acknowledges a dark wolf, then he says this is how happiness comes. The dark wolf's happy. And then the white wolf is happy too, just by acknowledging. Just one act, just acknowledging. And he says, and then we all win. So he goes on to say, for the dark wolf has many qualities that I need at times, that the white wolf doesn't have. And this is what he's telling the young kids. He says, this dark wolf gives me things such as tenacity, courage, fearlessness, strong will, and a great strategic thinking. But the white wolf complements these with compassion, caring, and strength, and the ability to recognize what is in the best interests of all. So he really went into some depth with these young kids to show them that you don't hate yourself. You don't hate your dark wolf. Your dark wolf has some characteristics that you dislike, like ego and pride and lying and things like that. But your dark wolf also has some qualities that you need. And if a bear is chasing you in a bush, well, then you need some strong will. You need to get out of there. But our dark wolf, we have to understand it, and that side of us. So you notice there's nothing in here about hating your dark wolf. In fact, he goes on to say, he says, you see, son, the white wolf needs the dark wolf at his side. To feed only one would starve the other, and they will become uncontrollable. To feed and care for both means they will serve you well and do nothing that is not part of something greater, something good and something of life. Feed them both, and there will be no more internal struggle for your attention. And when there is no battle inside, you can listen to the voices of deeper knowing that will guide you in choosing what is right in every circumstance. It goes on to say, peace, my son, is the indigenous mission in life. A man or a woman who has peace inside has everything. A man or woman who is pulled apart by the war inside him or her has nothing. How you choose to interact with the two opposing forces within will determine your life. Starve one or the other, or guide them both. So there you have it. There's the two stories of these two forces within. So we have the Bible's version, and then we have the indigenous version. And what I find fascinating is the fact that we have these two versions in different communities, and in some of these indigenous communities, they go back thousands of years, and these stories of the Lord, nothing's ever written down. These are just stories, and they get passed down and passed down, and this is how they would teach the children, just like how Paul was trying to teach the Galatians to understand these two forces within and to try to find some balance. So friends, until next time, follow along. I have a couple of poems on the two wolves. I'm going to talk about the white wolf, the dark wolf, and then a little thing that's a little fight within. More of a sense of this. So thanks again, friends, and have yourself a great day and live your life with love. Bye for now.